The vibe of a first date is often decided before the drinks even hit the table. You walk in with shoulders tight, your voice clipped, and your eyes scanning for danger, and suddenly the whole room feels like an oral exam. You walk in grounded, curious, and warm, and the exact same room feels like a small adventure. That shift is not luck. That shift is framing. Picture a thermostat on the wall instead of a spotlight on your face. A spotlight makes you perform. A thermostat makes you regulate. First date framing works like that thermostat because the emotional temperature you set in the first moments quietly shapes what both people notice, what both people risk saying, and what both people assume is possible. This matters for attraction, but it also matters for safety, consent, and simple human dignity. By the end, you will know how to lead the vibe without acting fake, forcing chemistry, or turning connection into a script. Imagine the very first exchange at the door. One person says, "I am terrible at this," and laughs in panic. The other person smiles politely but retreats half a step. A different opening happens on another night. The same person says, "I am glad you made it. I picked a place where we can actually hear each other." Same face, same clothes, same time of day, and a completely different emotional lane appears. That is your first proof that framing is real. Psychologists who study thin slice judgments keep finding that people form durable impressions from tiny samples of behavior. Across many controlled setups, observers can guess confidence, warmth, and tension from brief clips with no deep context. They are not reading your soul, but they are reading signals. Your pace, your tone, your eye contact, and your first assumptions become the weather report for the next part of the date. If the weather says storm, both people pack emotional umbrellas. Now test this quickly on yourself before your next date. Say this line out loud in a rushed voice. I hope this is not awkward. Then say this line out loud in a slower voice. I am curious what your week was really like. Notice what happens in your chest and jaw between those versions. The words matter, but the frame behind the words matters more. And your body broadcasts that frame before your mind finishes talking. A lot of people here lead the vibe and think manipulation. That is the wrong model. Manipulation tries to override another person. Framing at its best creates conditions where both people can show up honestly. Think of it like setting the table before dinner. You are not controlling what someone will say, but you are making it easier for real conversation to happen. Here's a micro story that makes this concrete. Maya met Noah at a quiet cafe after a brutal workday. She almost canceled because she felt drained and defensive. When Noah sat down, he did not launch into a polished monologue. He noticed her tight smile and said, I had one of those days where my brain forgot how to be social, so if I pause, I am just rebooting. Maya laughed, exhaled, and admitted she felt the same. Within minutes, they were not pretending to be perfect strangers. They were two humans recovering from the same kind of day. What happened there is a mix of emotional contagion and permission. Emotional contagion is the tendency for people to unconsciously catch each other's tone, energy, and pacing. If one person is braced for judgment, the other often braces too. If one person models calm curiosity, the other often softens. Researchers repeatedly observe this mirroring effect in posture, facial expression, and vocal rhythm, especially in unfamiliar social interactions. Your nervous system is not a private island during a first date. There is also a second mechanism at work, and it is brutal when you ignore it. Expectations can become self-fulfilling. If you silently decide this will be painful, you ask safer questions, reveal less, and interpret neutral moments as bad signs. Then the conversation actually becomes thin and stiff, which confirms your original fear. If you frame the date as a shared discovery, you ask better questions, tolerate small pauses, and read ambiguity with more generosity. That tends to produce better moments, which then reinforce the better frame. Try another instant check right now. Sit back, drop your shoulders, and breathe out slowly until your next inhale arrives on its own. Then ask yourself one question in plain language. What would curiosity sound like in my first 2 minutes? That tiny reset changes your vocal tone in ways people can hear immediately. You are not becoming a different person. You are choosing which version of you enters first. The next twist is conversational design. Many dates die because both people accidentally run an interview. Where are you from? What do you do? Where did you go to school? And suddenly it feels like paperwork. A better frame uses prompts that invite stories instead of resumes. Ask about a moment, not a category. Ask what surprised them this week, what they changed their mind about recently, or what place in the city they defend for irrational reasons. Research on reciprocal self-disclosure suggests closeness grows when sharing deepens in a balanced rhythm. One person offers something slightly personal, the other responds with comparable openness, and trust builds step by step. Speed dating studies often find that perceived connection rises less from perfect answers and more from mutual responsiveness, warmth, and timing. In other words, people remember how the conversation felt in their body, not whether your fun fact was impressive. There is a common misconception worth killing here. Leading the vibe does not mean filling every silence with clever lines. Silence is not always danger. Sometimes silence is processing, attraction, or simple nervous system recovery. If you panic and overtalk, you raise the temperature too fast. If you stay present and relaxed for a beat, you show emotional steadiness, and steadiness is magnetic. You can see this in awkward moments, which are unavoidable. Imagine you tell a joke that lands flat and the table goes quiet. One frame says disaster, then you spiral and explain the joke for 30 painful seconds. Another frame says repair is normal, then you smile and say, that one sounded better in my head, and move on. Relationship research keeps finding that repair attempts matter more than perfect performance. People trust someone who can recover without collapsing or blaming. Now raise the stakes a little further. First date framing is not only about romance. It predicts whether both people feel respected enough to set boundaries clearly. A warm frame with clean communication makes it easier to say yes honestly and no safely. A tense or performative frame can push people into guessing games and mixed signals. Good framing, therefore, protects both connection and consent at the same time. At this point, you might wonder whether this is just for naturally charismatic people. Evidence and lived experience point the other way. Charisma is often less about dazzling traits and more about regulated attention. People who seem magnetic usually do three simple things consistently. They notice the other person clearly. They reveal themselves in digestible steps. They respond rather than react when tension rises. None of that requires a perfect face, a perfect job, or a perfect script. So keep the thermostat metaphor close. Before the date, set your own temperature with breath, posture, and one curious intention. In the opening minutes, use language that creates shared space instead of performance pressure. During the conversation, trade stories instead of resumes and let silence breathe when it needs to. When awkwardness appears, repair quickly and move forward. Through all of it, aim for honest warmth, because people can feel the difference between warmth and acting. Think back to that first moment when you walk through the door and the room seems to tilt toward tension or ease. The room did not change. You did, and your frame invited the other person to meet you there. Lead the vibe like a thermostat, not a spotlight, and the date stops feeling like a test you must pass. It starts feeling like two people finding out whether they can build good weather together.